Hey YouTube, SlingBlade98 here. This is going to be a wrestling discussion video. The first thing I'd like to talk about in this multi-topic video is my opinion about how TNA is doing well and improving. One of the things I really like, and these are all kind of random things that I think they're doing well, and there's a couple things thrown in here which I think they could do better, but you know, overall everything in life is a mixed bag, and this is a pretty good bag, if you know what I mean. So coming in at number one on the things I'd like to talk about is how Hulk Hogan, I think, is actually a very good and underrated GM. He's not overly present on screen. While he is there a number of times a night, he's not too involved in the storylines. There's not some, thing where he's feuding with the number one face, similar to McMahon, Austin, or Laurinaitis, Cena. He does his job, and that's something that I think is actually quite refreshing, because I think that the non-wrestlers have come to dominate the show in a lot of things, especially in WWE. So it's good to see that while Hulk Hogan is doing his on-screen job, he's not completely dominating the show. You know, he had an angle with Aries going where he set up a main event match, but he's not directly feuding with anyone, which is so refreshing, especially because Hogan's legendary for being kind of an egomaniac. I'm surprised that they're letting him, or that he is letting them use him in this kind of modest role compared to what he's used to doing, where he's used to being the face of the company or feuding with the face of the company like he did with The Rock a couple of years ago, back in 2002, I think it was. Okay, the next thing I'd like to talk about is something that TNA got criticized a lot for a number of years ago, which was that their whole main event picture was, ex-WWE or WCW wrestlers, and I feel like they've really fixed that, and they actually have some original people who haven't had mainstream success in another company, unless you consider ROH or IWA Mid-South to be mainstream. But they finally have a couple of guys who are in contention for the world title who aren't just, re-signs from another company who got released, Austin Aries and Robert Roode are two very legitimate champions, and they really have brought a lot of prestige back to the belt that, got lost, in my opinion, during, some of the crappy title reigns we've seen over the last couple of years, such as the 3-day long ones with Sting at Bound for Glory. I really feel as though TNA has legitimate original products, and they're actually pushing their young talent, which is the key to success, in my opinion, and the key to longevity in a promotion, is to hold on to these guys, and that's how legends are born. If you look at it, you invest in a young guy, and he, it's boom or bust. I mean, obviously, there's no way of being sure. It could go the way of Brock Lesnar, where he leaves in 3 or 4 years, or it could become like Mitsuharu Misawa, where like Giant Baba invested in him, and he became the face of the company for pretty much the next 10 years. Anyways, one thing I would like to see TNA do is drop the soap opera angles, such as the AJ Styles, Dixie Carter, non-wrestler feud. I haven't been following this, in all honesty, too much, so I'm not going to get very into detail, but I'll just say that I dislike these soap opera feuds, and anything romantic in wrestling is usually terrible. And talking about affairs with people's husbands, and then they bring on somebody who's not even an on-screen character and get them involved, and they don't have any acting skills. So I really dislike this feud a lot, and I'd like to see TNA drop this, because WWE is doing pretty much the same thing with the AJ storyline, in terms of it being a non-wrestling driven feud. It's more personality driven. I don't like that. So I'd like to see them get rid of things like that. Another compliment I have for them, and I hope you don't think I'm just sucking TNA's dick, I hope that these are reasonable compliments here. I like that the X Division is made to look important. It's a nice change of pace to see the mid-level belts actually pushed onto the par of the main event belts, and we haven't actually seen it done since RVD's World Television title reign in ECW. Somebody actually making the belts meaningful. That's a really nice change of pace. My only hope, since this is going to become a #1 contendership slot, similar to the Royal Rumble or Money in the Bank, is that it doesn't become predictable, and that everyone who wins it doesn't automatically become champion within a few months. Because, I mean, why even have a #1 contendership match if the person's pretty much already won it 3 months before the actual title match happens? I think that now and then somebody should lose this one, but overall the X Division title belt being made into a segue for the world title belt, it really works, and I think that maybe they could combine this somehow with the Bound for Glory series and create some really cool sort of tournament, and there could be some really intricate feuds here. I mean, there's a lot of lowbrow shit that happens in wrestling, but this could be something complex and actually maybe intellectual. Anyways, that's the last thing I have to say about TNA. Okay, so the next thing I'd like to talk about in this multi-topic video is the TNA World TV title picture, and some improvement ideas I have. Okay, so the first thing I'd like to say is I find that Devon as a face is kind of a vanilla character. I mean, that's kind of an ironic statement since he's black. But I think this tends to happen when heels who don't have the very best mic skills, because, you know, Brother Ray was always his mouthpiece, when they turn face, when heels like that turn face. I mean, another example I would cite, too, actually, would be MVP and Mark Henry. I mean, they were good as, you know, arrogant or destructive heels, but when they turned face, they didn't have the same mic skills. And I feel as though that's kind of happened with Devon. He doesn't cut many promos, and it kind of cuts into his credibility as a champion that he's not really given much of an on-screen character. And I think he needs some competition so the belt doesn't just become boring like the WWE mid-level belts, where they'll give it to one person for a year, and it's basically just an accessory, not a championship. Okay, my next point. I enjoy these weekly title defenses, so I hope you guys don't think I'm bashing the belt. And since he's been made to look like a legitimate champion by having the belts for months, I just think he needs a nemesis or at least a storyline. There's no division of people going after his title, so it's pretty much a squash match every week, because you know they won't have a 3-month champion drop the belt on, you know, a mid-card match on Impact to just some random scrub like Crimson or something, you know? And that's the kind of people he's fighting right now. And it just reminds me of like a match on Heat or something every time he comes out there. And Devon's getting a good pop, and he's, you know, not the best in the ring, but he's entertaining enough where if they put somebody up against him who could kind of carry him a little bit, he could, you know, really stretch this out to 7 or 8 months without it getting too boring. As I said earlier, the RVD title reign worked because, in part, he had an opponent who looked like he could actually beat RVD in Jerry Lynn. And since he had an opponent who looked like he could actually win the match and wasn't just, you know, a jobber veritably, his long title reign didn't get stale. And, you know, since he doesn't have that kind of competition, I feel as though his matches are just kind of there. So that's my spiel on the World Television title picture. Okay, 2 more quick topics. This video is almost over, but stick around for the last 2 subjects. I feel really bad for RVD and Jeff Hardy. They both look thrashed and unmotivated, and every time I see them on Impact, they're really there as fillers, and they really just look injured and beat up and terrible, bloated, sloppy, and the whole thing, you know. I really think that the veterans need some love too, and TNA actually has the complete opposite problem that almost every mainstream wrestling company we've ever seen has. They have the opposite problem in that their veterans are not doing much at all, where their young talent steals the show. I think that's how it should be, but at the same time, stick these guys in a feud against each other. Stick them in a tag team. That would be pretty cool. They could wrestle part-time since TNA's tag team division isn't stealing the show anymore, and perhaps they can, you know, rest off some of those nagging injuries while still being used on screen, because frankly they don't just look hurt, they look unmotivated, and they look like they're just kind of doing it to fulfill a contractual obligation. So I'd like to see some of our favorite wrestlers from a past era get a little bit more to do, because I know that they were both you know, big when they first came to TNA a couple of years ago, but I feel as though they're now just kind of thrown into the mix thoughtlessly, almost as though they're an afterthought. And considering how much awesome and crazy stuff these guys have done for the wrestling business, it's a little bit sad to see them as random gauntlet match participants or people who get thrown out of a battle royal in the first 5 minutes. I mean, I really like the idea of TNA pushing their own talent, but at the same time, you know, for instance, a month ago there was a battle royal on TV where like Magnus and people like that actually stayed in a long time after RVD and Jeff Hardy were gone, and that's retarded, I think. These guys are great wrestlers, and although they're both past their primes because of the hard bumps they've taken, they should be used for something. The last thing I'd like to talk about, I touched very briefly on earlier, and this is actually kind of a WWE topic. I'd like to talk about how somebody should really lose the Royal Rumble or Money in the Bank or this X Division thing whenever that happens. I mean, they wouldn't have to do that with the X Division series because that's you know, just starting this year. But somebody needs to lose one of these high-profile main event, you know, push things in order to make it look a little bit more like there's actual competition and not just like it's one-sided. We all know wrestling is predetermined, but when the matches are predictable and whoever wins the #1 contender match always wins the title, why even have it? Why not just make the #1 contender match for the title? Because I mean, like, the last 8 Royal Rumble winners have pretty much won the belt, And same with Money in the Bank. So I feel as though the cash-ins aren't really exciting anymore, because as soon as you see the guy running out of the audience or out from under the ring, or down the entrance ramp to cash it in, it's pretty much an automatic 1, 2, 3. And I feel as though they could create a really crazy feud if they were to actually have somebody lose their Royal Rumble match at or their Royal Rumble cash-in match at WrestleMania. I'm not even saying that right, but you guys know what I mean. Anyways, so rate, comment, subscribe. I love you guys. Slingblade98 out. I hope this video wasn't too coarse for you guys. Had a lot to talk about, and I haven't spoke about wrestling. So yeah, okay, bye-bye.